December 26, 1996. Police in Boulder, Colorado arrive at a beautiful home in an upscale neighborhood. Inside, a frantic mother has just reported her 6-year-old daughter missing and found a bizarre 3-page ransom note on the back staircase. 8 hours later, that little girl, JonBenét Ramsey, is discovered dead in the basement of the very same house. No sign of forced escape, no confirmed intruder. And from that moment on, this case becomes one of the most divisive mysteries in modern American criminal history. In this video, we're not chasing sensational headlines. We're digging into the most controversial pieces of evidence that still split experts down the middle. The ransom note, the DNA, the 911 call, the basement window, the timeline, the behavior of the family, and more. By the end, you may not have certainty, but you will understand why the truth has remained so stubbornly out of reach. To understand why this case still divides experts, we have to sort through almost 3 decades of speculation, media frenzy, and conflicting analyses. In this video, we'll move step by step through the core evidence. What was actually found in the house, how investigators interpreted it, and how forensic science has challenged or supported those early theories. We'll look at both intruder and inside the house scenarios, and we'll separate what's documented from what's rumor. This is a complex and emotionally charged story, so stay with me all the way to the end. The patterns only really emerge once you've seen each piece in context. If you're into deep dive, evidence-focused true crime breakdowns like this, consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss future investigations. For now, let's go back to that Christmas night in Boulder and trace JonBenét's final known movements and the first mistakes that may have doomed this investigation. The official story begins early the morning after Christmas. Patsy Ramsey says she comes downstairs and finds a 3-page ransom note on the back staircase demanding $118,000 for JonBenét's safe return, a very specific amount that matches John Ramsey's recent bonus. She screams, calls to John, and then dials 911 at 5:52 a.m. Police arrive quickly, but almost everything that happens next will be criticized for decades. Officers don't immediately treat the house as a locked-down crime scene. Friends and a pastor come over, moving through rooms, cleaning surfaces, and potentially destroying trace evidence. Only parts of the house are searched. The basement room where JonBenét's body will later be found is inexplicably left untouched for hours. Meanwhile, John begins making phone calls to friends and his pilot, considering a trip. These early hours are where many experts say the case may have been lost forever before the body was even discovered. The ransom note is one of the most unique and debated pieces of evidence in any American murder case. It's unusually long, around 370 words, and appears to have been written on paper from inside the house using a pen that also belonged to the Ramseys. It opens like a movie script. "We are a small foreign faction." It quotes movies like Dirty Harry and Ransom, and the tone swings from formal to oddly conversational. Experts are split. Some criminal profilers argue that real kidnappers almost never write lengthy notes inside the victim's home. It takes time and risk. Others say the bizarre style suggests staging by someone trying too hard to sound like an outsider. Handwriting analysts have said Patsy Ramsey could not be excluded, but no one, including the Ramseys, has been definitively matched. The police saw the note as a clumsy cover-up. The Ramseys insisted it proved an intruder knew the layout and felt comfortable enough to write inside. Handwriting analysis became a battleground. Multiple experts were hired by both law enforcement and the Ramsey family. The FBI's early opinion reportedly leaned away from Patsy as the writer, while some private experts suggested similarities that were hard to ignore. Certain letter formations, spacing, and even misspellings. Officially, Patsy was never conclusively identified nor eliminated. But handwriting analysis itself is controversial. It's considered more art than science by many in the forensic community. Studies have shown high error rates and strong susceptibility to bias. If an examiner knows who police suspect, their interpretation can unconsciously tilt toward that conclusion. Then there's the content. The note references John's bonus amount, uses phrases like good Southern common sense and adopts a theatrical tone. Is that insider knowledge peeking through, or deliberate misdirection by an intruder who had researched the family? Depending on which assumptions you bring to the note, you land in completely different camps, and that's exactly what happened with experts. The 911 call is another piece that's been replayed and dissected frame by frame. At 5:52 a.m., Patsy calls police, sounding frantic, reporting a kidnapping and reading key parts of the ransom note. To the human ear, it's chaotic but straightforward. However, enhanced audio performed later by different labs appears to reveal faint voices after Patsy thinks she's hung up. Some analysts claim they hear JonBenét's brother Burke and possibly John in the background, contradicting the Ramsey claim that Burke was asleep throughout. Others argue these so-called voices are auditory illusions created by noise reduction and expectation. You hear what you're told to hear. Importantly, the FBI's own audio lab never confirmed any clear additional voices. So experts split. Is the call a genuine panicked reaction to discovering a note, or the start of a staged narrative? Like much in this case, the recording raises as many questions as it answers, without providing courtroom-level certainty either way. 8 hours after the 911 call, Detective Linda Arndt asks John and a family friend to search the house from top to bottom. John goes straight to the basement, opens a little-used storage room, and finds JonBenét's body, covered with a white blanket, duct tape over her mouth, a cord around her neck, wrists loosely bound. He lifts her, carries her upstairs, and places her on the living room floor. From a forensic standpoint, almost everything about this moment is disastrous. Any potential intruder trace on the body, blanket, or floor is now hopelessly contaminated. But from a human perspective, many argue John's reaction, grabbing his daughter, is emotionally understandable. Autopsy would reveal a complex picture: strangulation by a garrote, a massive skull fracture, and signs that she had likely been stunned earlier. The big question: was the head injury or the strangulation first? Different experts reverse the sequence, each implying very different scenarios about intent, panic, and potential staging after death. Let's talk about one of the most confusing aspects of the autopsy: the order and meaning of JonBenét's injuries. She had a deep skull fracture, severe enough to be fatal on its own, but relatively little external bleeding. She was also strangled with a makeshift garrote constructed from a cord and a broken paintbrush handle. Some forensic pathologists believe the head blow came first, possibly from a fall or impulsive strike, with the strangulation staged later to look like a sadistic kidnapping. Others argue the opposite, that strangulation occurred first, with the head wound delivered later, either during the attack or as part of staging. There were also indications of chronic irritation in the vaginal area, suggestive to some of prior abuse but fiercely disputed by the family's experts, who blamed medical conditions and normal childhood issues. These debates matter because they point toward motive: accident turned cover-up, premeditated assault, or a twisted intruder scenario. Each side can marshal credible experts, and each side sees the other as reading the evidence through a biased lens. For years, the most powerful argument for an intruder was DNA. Touch DNA and trace samples recovered from JonBenét's underwear and leggings did not match any family member. In 2008, the Boulder District Attorney used this to officially clear the Ramseys, stating the DNA likely belonged to the killer. Case closed? Not for many experts. Critics point out that low-level touch DNA can come from manufacturing, packaging, or secondary transfer. Clothing can contain DNA from people who never came near the victim. Later studies of new clothing lines showed exactly that: random, unknown DNA on brand new garments. Some forensic scientists argue the amount and pattern of DNA in JonBenét's case are consistent with innocent contamination. So, is the DNA an intruder's smoking gun or an unreliable red herring elevated by prosecutors under pressure? The answer depends on how much weight you give to low-template DNA science versus the totality of the scene, and that's where experts fracture sharply. Then there's the basement window, central to virtually every intruder theory. One window pane was cracked, and John Ramsey admitted he had previously broken and used that window months earlier when locked out. On the day of the crime, the window was found ajar, with a scuff mark on the wall and what some believe looked like a partial footprint on a nearby suitcase. Pro-intruder experts argue this provides a plausible entry. An offender slips in through the window, navigates the house, writes the note, and attacks JonBenét. Others point out the lack of clear disturbance in the cobwebs, dust, and snow outside. No definitive shoe prints, no obvious trace of a climb through. Crime scene photographs have been interpreted and reinterpreted endlessly. Small details, like whether a spiderweb is intact, turn into giant arguments. Could an intruder have entered there? Yes, physically possible. Did they? That answer depends on which tiny clues you prioritize and which inconsistencies you're willing to overlook. One of the strangest pieces of evidence is deceptively simple. A bowl of pineapple and milk on the kitchen table. Autopsy revealed undigested pineapple in JonBenét's stomach, suggesting she ate it not long before her death. In crime scene photos, the bowl appears on the table, with Burke's fingerprints reportedly on the glass nearby, but not JonBenét's. The Ramseys said they put JonBenét to bed without feeding her pineapple. Burke, in later interviews, claimed he might have been the one eating it. So who prepared the bowl? Did JonBenét come down and eat from someone else's snack? Was she awake longer than the parents recalled, or did memory and later legal strategy reshape their story? For some experts, the pineapple supports a family-related incident late at night, potentially followed by a panicked cover-up. For others, it's just another ambiguous clue in a house full of normal family life items, overinterpreted by people determined to make every object sinister. Behavioral evidence has also driven deep divisions. Critics of the Ramseys point to what they see as odd reactions, hiring attorneys quickly, giving limited police interviews at first, conducting a controlled TV appearance, and John's decision to move the body. Supporters argue that wealthy families often lawyer up immediately, especially when police and media suspicion focus on them from day one. Experts in victim behavior caution that there is no correct way to act after a child's death. Shock can look like coldness, hysteria, or even logistical planning. Yet, body language specialists and profilers have made careers dissecting the Ramseys' interviews. Micro-expressions, word choices, slips in tense. The problem is that behavioral analysis is highly subjective. Two trained professionals can watch the same footage and reach opposite conclusions. In a case already loaded with class resentment, media bias, and public anger, these interpretations often say as much about the observer as the observed. Over the years, multiple suspects and theories have competed for attention. Some focus on an unknown intruder, perhaps someone who saw JonBenét in pageants or at church, or a worker familiar with the house. There were false confessions, including a man whose story crumbled under scrutiny. None matched the physical or DNA evidence convincingly. Family-focused theories usually involve either an accidental blow by Burke, followed by parental staging, or one parent harming JonBenét and the other helping cover it up. These scenarios try to reconcile the head injury, the garrote, and the note as part of a panicked attempt to avoid losing another child to the legal system. Prosecutors and grand juries considered charges. In 1999, a grand jury reportedly voted to indict John and Patsy on charges related to child abuse resulting in death, but the DA declined to prosecute, saying the evidence was insufficient. That single decision cemented the case's limbo: strong suspicion but no trial and no legal resolution. When you lay all of this out, the ransom note, DNA, injuries, window, pineapple, 911 call, and behavior, one thing becomes clear. Almost every piece of evidence cuts both ways. Elements that seem to scream intruder can also be framed as clumsy staging. Details that appear to implicate the family can be explained by trauma, contamination, or investigative error. Forensic science itself has evolved since 1996. We now understand that handwriting and behavioral analysis are far less reliable than once believed. Low-level DNA is more ambiguous than early prosecutors suggested. Meanwhile, the original scene was so compromised that key questions may never be answered with scientific certainty. The JonBenét Ramsey case sits at the intersection of media frenzy, flawed investigation, and evolving science. It forces us to confront how badly we want a neat narrative. and how uncomfortable it is to admit that sometimes, with all the cameras and experts in the world, the truth can remain genuinely out of reach. If you've made it this far, you can see why JonBenét's case still divides experts, investigators, and the public nearly 30 years later. Every faction believes they're following the evidence, and yet they land in opposite places. As new DNA technologies emerge and pressure mounts on bolder authorities to re-examine the case, there is still a slim chance that decisive evidence could surface. But we also have to accept the possibility that this mystery may never be fully resolved. In the meantime, how we talk about cases like this matters. JonBenét was a real child, not just a headline or theory. If you value deep, evidence-driven breakdowns that respect victims and question easy answers, consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell, and sharing this video with someone who still follows this case. Let me know in the comments which evidence you find most compelling and what other cold cases you'd like to see unpacked with this level of detail.